Whoa! What's up, everybody? On today's show, it is a special Locked On crossover event. Really fun. I'm being joined by my buddy Ethan Smith of Locked On Pirates. Sir, how are you?
Doing good, man. I can't complain. I mean, I'm not exactly in a fit that says I'm from Pittsburgh right now, wearing all of my Georgia stuff down here. As it's starting to get a little cooler down here. I guess I'm kind of meshing with the enemy at the moment. Things are
Mm-hmm.
making their waves with the Atlanta Braves winning the World Series, even though I can't stand that since what happened in 1992. But other than that, I'm doing
Wow.
good. It's a fun Thursday. It's November 4th. Haven't heard Mariah Carey yet, so we're slowing that roll already. So we're doing
Yeah.
good.
Oh my God. Look, I am so against the Christmas music Halloween thing. I just don't understand this obsession with playing something for 2 months or like a month in this case. It's just like you can wait. It's okay. Just wait a month. It's
Well,
fine. Right
tell the
after your
stores that
Thanksgiving
too.
dinner. Oh
Yeah,
no, of
tell the
course, of
stores
course,
that
of
too.
course. I mean, you
Like, I
can't
mean,
tell
they
the
sit there
stores
and put
that, so the
everything up.
least I think we could ask for is for people to at least just be like I just don't believe that most people love Christmas music that much that they have to
Hmm.
play it starting November 1st. I just don't believe that. I just think you're being obnoxious and being contrarian. But then
Yeah,
again,
realistically,
that's how people are. As always, guys,
probably
I'm your
Dodgers
host.
fans.
Oh yeah, 100% Dodgers fans. As always, guys, I'm your host. With sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with some of my work at Baseball FYI, Friars on Base, Off Bench Baseball, or just Baseball, which I'm a staff writer for. Today's episode, by the way, it is November 4th, a Thursday. We're going to be talking about a lot of Pirates stuff, obviously, with Ethan on today. We're going to be talking about Bryan Reynolds, who is a guy that a lot of people have messaged me about, tweeted at me about, whatever. Talked about this on a couple episodes ago. And then going to be revisiting the Adam Frazier trade, which was kind of the only big major move that the Padres made, and kind of re-looking at that and seeing how it helped the Pirates, like from Mr. Ethan's perspective. And then just vibing and talking about the offseason, guys. So very fun episode. Ethan, you ready to get into it?
Yes, sir. Of course.
All right, let's do it, man. Love the background, by the way, the Super Bowl champion Steelers. I respect the back just because as someone who doesn't have a background, I literally just have curtains. You know what I'm saying? I do not like the Steelers at all, really, but I respect that just going on there. It's really good stuff. And also, guys,
Well,
thank you for
usually,
making Locked On Padres and Locked On Pirates your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Yeah, what were we gonna say?
oh, I was gonna say usually there's more hats back there, but I've been wearing some of them because it's like this one was up there.
Mm-hmm.
This one was up there. Like there was a bunch of different ones that were up there. I will be debuting a Christmas shirt when the time is appropriate that I think
Ooh.
you and most people will like.
Uh-huh.
That'll be very interesting as well for the podcast.
I like that, man. I like that. I like that. So let's get into it, dude. Let's start with Mr. Bryan Reynolds, right? Bryan Reynolds, who is 26 years old, who was, I mean, basically pretty easily the best. But like it was a little bit of a surprise, but how much of a surprise before we get into kind of, his standing and how valuable of an asset he is. How's that surprising? Was like a super breakout? Was this Cedric Bullets, or was the talent always there and maybe people didn't just realize it?
So 2020 was a really kind of down year for him. And
Mm-hmm.
realistically, like he kind of just regained the form that he had in 2019. And I think pretty much everybody had a down year in 2020. I think that was
Yeah.
really one of those things that was just kind of universal around baseball. Now, the hitting side of things was not exactly like the most surprising thing in the world because if you look at him through his minor league time, he's always hit around the 290 to 300 range. That's just who he is. The defensive side of things was really where a lot of people were like, whoa, wait a minute. He's a gold glove candidate in center field. And
Mm-hmm.
shouts out to Bryan Reynolds, by the way, for having the best fielding percentage of any center fielder this year in all of Major League Baseball, at least in the National League. I don't know if in all of baseball, but I know in the National League he had a 994 fielding percentage, best in the National League. So is he going to win the Gold Glove? Probably not. I don't think he's going to get the recognition that he deserves in that area. I personally don't
Oh,
think he deserves a Silver Slugger either, just because, I mean, you look at how Juan Soto and Bryce Harper played this year. I think those two guys are unmatched in that area.
mm-hmm.
But the surprising part, again, was the defense. The fact that he shifted from left field to center field. basically brought a new dynamic to that center field spot as well. Because I mean, before the season started, I talked about it numerous occasions. I was like, I don't know who our center fielder is going to be. And then all of a sudden you check out and you look over and you got number 10, Bryan Reynolds out there at center field saying, okay, I guess I'm going to do this now. And then, of course, Ben Gamble, a Cleveland kind of throwaway, comes over. He does good as well. But we're still looking for another outfielder. So I have coined Cutch to Pittsburgh as a new hashtag here at the Locked On Podcast Network that I am waiting to see and happen, as he just opted out of his deal yesterday. But yeah, I mean, Bryan Reynolds, I wasn't entirely surprised that he did that. I never really saw him as like an all-star either, but that was also due to like Mookie Betts and a couple other players having down years. But it was a fun season for him. And I mean, I wasn't entirely surprised, but I wasn't entirely like not surprised, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean. And look, as obviously the Pirates are in my division, so like I didn't know much about the team for the most part. And what's funny, aside from the Joe Musgrove trade, we could also relitigate if you'd like. It's like kind of what was so funny is when I saw Bryan Reynolds was doing so well, I'm like, wow, yeah, he's been in the major leagues a really long time. Like I'm happy that he's having this random kind of good season. And then I realized I was thinking of Mark Reynolds. If you remember him, was he on the Pirates? I can't remember. I think he was at one point, maybe. Was he? Hold on. I might be
Mark
lying.
Reynolds.
Mark Reynolds. He was
If
on
he
Baltimore.
was there,
He was on
it
Colorado.
wasn't very long. Yeah, I know he was with Colorado. He was a Colorado National and Baltimore Oriole. He was never in Pittsburgh. I mean, he sounds like a kind of guy that might have been in Pittsburgh. But shockingly, people always think Reynolds has been in the major leagues for that like very long. He debuted in 2019.
Yeah.
So he's only been there for like 3 years. But I mean, he was also, I kind of, again, the other reason I'm lobbying for McCutchen is because he's who we got in the Andrew McCutchen trade from the San Francisco Giants. So it'd just be so funny to just flip the script on it and just have McCutchen and Reynolds out there beside each other. Be amazing. But we'll see if it happens or not. I doubt it, because Bob Nutting hates to spend money. Am I supposed to be a Pirates host? If I'm not a Pirates host if I don't say Bob Nutting doesn't spend money.
Yeah, I mean, like, and here's another thing, which you mentioned about the defense. I mean, if you just look at 2019, that first year, if you just look at outs above average, he had 2, which is fine. And then all of a sudden this year, 11, 10 through center field, 0 through left field. But like, it's just kind of, and then 1 in left field. But like, that's just kind of just shows you the jump. It reminds me, just for Padres fans, a small comparison in terms of like Hunter Renfroe, who isn't as good, but Hunter Renfroe had that like, wait, what? This guy is a good defender all of a sudden type of value to him. Of course, they end up trading him, but just for a Padres sort of comparison, I think that it's always interesting when that starts happening. Do you think that he can keep up the level of production that he had this year?
I hope he does personally, but I mean, I think he can. Especially defensively. I think that's not just a fluke this year. I don't think that's just something that he decided. He just was like, okay, I'm going to go be a Gold Glove center fielder this year. I don't think that's just something that he decided to do. I think it's something that he's going to turn himself into. Now, I will be quite frankly honest here. It's almost impossible for a guy to hit around 300 or over 300 every single year. You saw that for your Padres, for instance, with Fernando Tatis Jr. this year. I mean, everybody's like, he's having a down year. It's like, cool. He has 15 more years to figure it out. Don't worry. He's fine. And I will even tell that to your listeners too. He's fine. The Padres.
Oh, they're not worried.
Fine.
I don't think they're worried about him. They're not worried about Tatis.
I mean, but even the Padres in general, you missed the playoffs when you were expected to. Guess what? That happens to how many teams over the course of like the last decade? And then guess what happens? They go and win the World Series 2 years from them, and nobody remembers that year. But speaking on Reynolds again, one, I think he's untouchable. I don't know if you saw me and the Mariners host talking in our little chat that we had the other day about the Julio Rodriguez for Bryan Reynolds thing. And yeah,
top Seattle Mariners prospect.
Yeah. But that's our asking price. It's like 2 top prospects that we want to see in basically the top 100, and Cherington is not slipping on that at all. He said, this is what I want, and if that's either you're going to give me this or he's not going anywhere. So I mean, is he going to the Padres? Probably not, because we've already made 2 trades with your team and taken some valuable prospects. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you're not trading Mackenzie Gore for Bryan Reynolds. You're probably not trading some of the other guys that you have for Bryan Reynolds, depending on how your front office would feel about it. Next year, I think will be very indicative to see what Bryan Reynolds is as a player, because 2022 is kind of a benchmark to say we need to get better. So is he going to stay where he's at and be the leader of this team, be the best player on this team? Or does he take that noticeable dip, but do other players help him out when he takes that dip? That's really what I'm looking for heading into 2022 and the offseason.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And before I push you back, or not push back on, because I agree with everything you said, before we kind of get a little bit more into the untouchable part of Bryan Reynolds, and maybe I offer you a mock trade, because why the hell not, worthy in the offseason. I need to talk to everybody, the listeners, our good listeners, about, you ever heard of Bet Online, Ethan? You ever heard of them before?
Yeah, I do it all the time.
Awesome. There you go, folks. We're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds than before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. It's easy to remember too. It's just Locked On. There you go. For basketball, football, to, of course, baseball this postseason, which has now come to an end, unfortunately, but whatever. They also got you covered in hockey and the NHL. They got you covered in boxing. They got you covered in UFC. All sorts of favorite Vegas casino games. They've got you covered, guys. You know what to do. It is the fastest and easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts. Where the game starts. And now, here's the thing, Ethan. Let's transition a little bit. You say he's untouchable. And you're saying the Padres wouldn't deal Mackenzie Gore. First of all, do you know who AJ Preller is? This man doesn't care. And so I think that part of the reason why listeners have been asking me about Bryan Reynolds is because, like you mentioned, we've already made 2 trades with the Pirates. So I think people naturally are making that correlation. They're saying, well, why not make another? You know what I'm saying? And they think sometimes this is a correct way of thinking. I think that in this case it's wrong, where they're not in the good right now. So that means that they might make a dumb trade, right? They've made dumb trades before, as you've probably talked about on your podcast, which we don't have to say because honestly it's just mean. I don't want to be mean about that. So I think that's why people are bringing it up. And in terms of Mackenzie Gore, he's like the new catcher position for the Padres, where like the Padres had this Francisco Mejia versus Austin Hedges thing in a while. Now it's becoming are you in the Mackenzie Gore camp or not? Because he has he struggled. He struggled quite a lot. I mean, just in terms of the minor league stuff, he had like these blisters and all this weird stuff. So he didn't pitch a lot in 2021. And then Keith Law came out and said he's looking like, the best prospect ever again and whatnot. And then let me see right here. His Arizona Fall League campaign posted a 6.35 ERA and allowed 15 hits and 6 walks over 11.1 innings pitched. He's your face kind of reacted there. Let's just say I wouldn't be that surprised if the Padres might be out of this guy. I don't necessarily know if they should be, but there is this feeling of, can they even get the best out of their pitchers? So I actually think that Mackenzie Gore could be on the table. Would that be enough, though, for the Pirates or Bryan Reynolds?
No.
No.
Let me go ahead and throw
have
another.
To be. Oh, go ahead.
Let me go because I'm looking at your top 10 because that's where you're going to be looking. I think CJ Abrams is probably untouchable, and we don't need a middle infield prospect. We don't need another one. We have like 12. We don't need another one. Robert Hassel would be interesting. We are looking for outfield depth, but I see his ETA is 2023, so we'd probably be looking. The reason I said Gore is because his ETA is 2022. If you're trading Bryan Reynolds right now, they're going to be looking for guys that you can immediately say we can throw them in the lineup on opening day in 2022 and be pieces. That's kind of what we saw. And whenever we talk about the Adam Frazier trade, it was a little different because the timing was a little different. Louis Campisano, who I've mentioned to you before, I struck out before in Little League Baseball, just so everybody knows this, would be an interesting one as well. I mean, because, you drafted Henry Davis, number 1 overall, because everybody in my mentions is always talking about we messed up by not trading Frazier to the Dodgers for Keibert Ruiz. I said, when were we ever getting Keibert Ruiz? That was never going to happen. Like, maybe if you traded him Bryan Reynolds, sure. but you're not getting Kybert Ruiz that way. But Louis Campusano, the thing that's interesting about him is when you watch him, he's a very good catcher, first of all, for most intents and purposes. But he would, like, you drafted Henry Davis #1 overall, but Henry Davis is so far down the line right now that it's like, okay, Michael Perez literally batted under 100 with runners in scoring position this year. That's something you don't do. Like, you just can't have that as a backup catcher and place all this onus on Jacob Stallings, who be expected to see a lot of Jacob Stallings to the Giants talks, I think, because there's not a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
good catchers on the market right now. And trading Jacob Stallings would be terrible for the Pirates, I think, but it's something they might consider. But when looking at it, if you could say you could have Louis Campusano, Mackenzie Gore, and then maybe you scroll down and look at guys like Victor Acosta, Brian Medina, guys like that are way lower, that are farther away, then you probably get to a talking point. But that's what I'm saying. The point of how Cherington treats Reynolds as a player, because of the amount of years of arbitration that he still has,
Yep.
and the
That's
fact
the
that
key.
they have already expressed interest in extending him. They just haven't talked to him about it yet. That's what makes him so untouchable. Is it's different from saying he's like Bryce Harper level untouchable. He's not. I mean, you could trade him with the right asking price, but it's hard to run away from something where you have a 26-year-old who's only going to be making, I think the projected arbitration number was 4.5. Like, you
Yeah.
take that every day of the week as a team that literally does not have any contracts past 2021 right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit the nail right on the head. It sounds like a Gore plus one of those guys. See, like you said, CJ Abrams is probably untouchable for all intents and purposes in the Padres system. I say probably because I do think that when we start getting into trade talks regarding prospects, we always forget that, like, GMs are not necessarily us or anyone in particular, but people tend to forget, like, guys don't just log on to Baseball Reference and to Baseball America and they're like, okay, these are the guys that I can't trade. You know what I'm saying? Everybody views their prospects differently. For all we know, the Padres are down on CJ Abrams. I don't think they are, but for all we know, they could just be saying, yeah, we like the guy, but we're absolutely open to trading him. They may be super high on Robert Hassel. We don't know exactly. And the Pirates, for some reason, could be down on some of the guys in their farm system, some of their backups, some of their middle infielders, like you were mentioning before. So we don't know for sure. And we don't know if, Gore and a couple other prospects that we get that deal announced, right? I think it would be very surprising based on what you've been telling me and based on what I've heard as well. But it's definitely one of those things where it does feel like Pods fans are just kind of hoping that the Pirates will do another bad trade. And I think that while anyone should hope for that, absolutely, especially if you're a team that has World Series aspirations, it's not something I'd be looking for. Obviously, he'd be a great fit considering that we just had Tommy Pham last year, who could not hit. You talked about can't hit with as a scoring position. He was among the worst in that department. He was terrible. And then he looked incredibly old, specifically when he tried to play defense. That guy had no reaction time. Every time he fell to down to the field, it looked like it would take him 6 years to get up. I'm like, I don't understand this. You look fine when you're batting, but in the outfield, he looks like he's 56 years old. So I know that a lot of Pods fans are like, all right, we would have Grisham, then Bryan Reynolds. Like, that'd be gold glove caliber type of outfielders, but I don't know if it's realistic, even if it's just, it would be very, very lovely, especially to get, just a guy that doesn't cost as much. But that's the key part, is the arbitration.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where you really, if you're going to make moves right now, not to bring up the thing that shall not be named. By the way, I just finished all the Harry Potter movies in the past week and a half.
Oh, nice.
The CBA is going to happen. December 2nd, it's very likely things are going to stop. You're not going to get winter meetings. That's why I think you saw yesterday the Tigers and the Reds made those moves already, because I think a lot of these managers already can tell what's going to happen. So they're going to make moves right now. They're going to make them over the next couple of weeks, because they're not going to sit there and say, let's hold off a second. Let's see how this goes. And then you have to wait 4 months to make your trade. You're not going to do that. You want to make these things now, especially if you're like a team like the Pirates, who has to figure out who they're protecting, who they're not protecting for the Rule 5 draft, who they're putting on their 40-man roster with all these young players. Like, you don't want to wait around and see that stuff. And I'll be honest, if Bryan Reynolds gets traded, it's not going to be like me or Bryce Patrick with Joey Gallo. I love Bryan Reynolds, but I don't have a severe attachment to him. But I will still be very, very annoyed, especially depending on where he goes. But we'll see. I don't know. Anything can happen when you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. I've
Mhm.
already suggested that we could win the World Series next year, and I wouldn't even be phased. I really wouldn't. Like, it would not even phase me.
What? What's wrong
Like, I'm
with you?
serious. Well,
You really are a
I
sad
mean,
boy.
like, I'm saying, like, it wouldn't phase me in the wrong way. Like, it would be
Oh, okay, okay.
like, oh wow, the Pirates did something they weren't supposed to do, and then they would get to the playoffs and like lose in the wild card game or something, right? And then
Mhm.
like when they are supposed to win, they'll go like 78 and 84 and like not know how to play baseball again. Like that's just kind of like the nature of the Pirates ever since I've known them.
Wow. Just sounded like a broken man
Yeah.
right
I
now.
mean, Javi, last year in 2020, you saw more playoff
Oh,
wins from
yeah,
the
I know.
Padres in an expanded playoff than I've seen from the Pirates in my entire lifetime. I've seen them win 4 playoff games. 4.
Absolutely rough. Absolutely rough. So
Yeah.
for Padres fans, if you think you have it rough, you usually have. In fairness, they usually have had it rough. They were
Yes.
in that Pirates department. But right now, I just think that team next year, and now we just have to talk about this. You brought up Adam Frazier. We'll talk about that in a second. But I just think like next year, just a general regression to average is what I think Padres fans can at least hope for. I don't think that their team should have won less than, like, they shouldn't have gone below 500. So at the very least, like, an 88 win team next year, that could be possible depending on what they do this offseason. Obviously, they've had the Melvin and Ruben Nebel hirings. Like, there's still a lot to happen. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that when you mentioned Reynolds, I do think usually you get a little chatter, right? Before a trade happens. Like, I think people are just kind of trying to wish this into thin air. Like when with the Yankees fans, how they're trying to pretend that they're going to trade like, Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar for like Matt Olson. You know what I'm saying? Like they've just been trying to like prop this into thin air. Usually before a trade, or at least that there's a possibility, usually you'll hear something like, some team checked in or whatever. That usually seems to be the idea. And I haven't heard anything like that whatsoever. And what happened with Adam Frazier, for example, there were kind of teams checking in. He did seem like a guy that could be available, especially because he had never really done what he had done in the first half of
No.
2021 before. So let's relitigate that really quickly. The Padres, obviously, their big trade deadline move this past season was Adam Frazier, who at the time was an all-star second baseman. He was leading the National League in batting average and in hits, or maybe it was just hits and maybe not batting average. I don't know. I forgot if like
No, he was leading in
part
hits
was
for
he?
a hot minute. Him and
Yeah, he
Nicholas
was.
Castellanos were going
Mhm.
back and forth for it for a while.
That was fun. I remember those times. But then he comes to the Padres, and for the first couple weeks, he's hitting like 176. So let's just talk about the trade really quickly. The pieces that the Pirates got back, how was that viewed from a Pirates perspective? What did that do for that team? Were you happy with the trade in the moment?
I mean, in the moment, sure. I wasn't expecting the Padres. That was my first reaction to all of that was, oh wait, we traded him to San Diego. I was like,
Mhm.
by the way, I almost slip up every time I talk about the Padres because I always say San Diego, but I still call the Chargers the San Diego Chargers sometimes. So then I have to fix
Fair
myself.
enough.
So don't be ever mad at me if I freaking sit there and call you the Los Angeles Padres, just because it'll be a mixture of things. But Chukwupita Marcano, I think, was the main kind of piece that we saw.
Mhm.
Some people wanted him to come up immediately. I said no. You have way too many guys right now, and there's a strong chance, and I think he will come up in 2022. And he's basically Adam Frazier light. Like, do you guys remember back when you had the iPhone 5C and you could get it in different colors? Like,
Yeah, I remember that.
Adam Frazier is like the blue one, and then Tucupita Marcano is the yellow one. They're the same phone. They're just one looks cooler than the other one. And it's like, okay, well, cool. Jack Sawinski was another one. He was apparently really
Yep.
loved in the clubhouse in the minor leagues. And then Michelle Milano, which I wanted to call him Michael Milano for the longest time, but I realized it's literally Michelle without an E Milano. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
okay, cool. And then, I
Mhm.
mean, cash considerations, whatever. Cash considerations is always the best part of every trade because, I mean, cash considerations has a lot of upside. But I mean, I like that they mentioned Tucupita Marcano as an infielder. But if I vaguely remember when you guys played us early in the season, he was playing the outfield in that game, if I'm not mistaken. And I know he
Yeah,
got a
they can
hit
move him
against
around a
us.
little bit. Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, and with the void that we have in right field right now, if the season was going on, it would probably be Anthony Alford or Yoshi Tsutsugo. Yoshi Tsutsugo cannot play the position. I was happy with the trade. I think a lot of people in Pittsburgh thought we were going to get a lot more for him, and I don't think people realize that this league is a power dynamic league, and Adam Frazier is more of the guy that says, okay, I'm going to lead the inning off, get a single, and then throw it to Tatis, Machado, Will Myers, and Hosmer and whatever, like the death lineup that you guys were supposed to have, and he's just going to be on base all the time. That's what he's supposed to be. But in a league now that's so predicated on power, he wasn't going to garner you anything crazy. But I think it's fully expected to see Tucupita Marcano in 2022. I think Sawinski and Miliano, that's actually how you pronounce it, are a little bit farther away. No problem with that, though. I mean, we'll see how it works. I mean, even the Joe Musgrove trade, you're not going to see Hudson Head in the majors until maybe 2024. So, I mean, you're not even going to know the ramifications of that trade until then. I mean, you really look at it, Colin Moran is the only standing player left from the Garrett Cole trade from Houston and Pittsburgh. So, I mean, it takes a while to figure these trades out, especially when you're on the other side of it. Like for the Padres, obviously, it was kind of a dud because Frazier just took a major regression for no good reason. But for the Pirates, who knows? It might end up being a very good trade. It might not at all. It might not affect anything. You're not sure yet just because you haven't seen the play. Yeah. I mean, now the Joe Musgrove trade, that was a win for both teams. I don't care what anybody says.
I think that the Musgrove trade at the minimum got the team's first no-hitter in franchise history, so everyone will always remember that. I think that with the Adam Frazier trade, it's funny because someone brought up with me, they're like, yeah, well, you started tweeting in excitement when it happened. Don't go back on it now. I'm like, fair, but also in fairness, in the moment, you know this because like my bit has been screaming, begging him to murder me after literally every move that happens. That's just my bit. And then when he broke it down, it was Frazier could have been a solid piece for the team for sure. But, you know, he's at least been a solid player before was now, and they were betting on, you know, can he continue that, which he didn't, but still it's a fine bet to make maybe. But the big thing for me was they didn't need that type of player. They didn't need an infielder, first of all, necessarily. You still had, or at least you theoretically were supposed to have Jurickson Profar and Ha-Seong Kim to be able to do stuff for you. And then on top of that, like you said, he wasn't a power guy. The Padres were towards the bottom percentile of the league. They were like one of the 10 worst teams in home runs and slugging percentage. So it was kind of like, I didn't know if Adam Frazier was the right move to make, but nonetheless, they still made it. And I think a lot of people might be saying, oh, Marcano and Michelle. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's Michelle Miliano.
Michelle Miliano, and then Jack Sawinski, they're like, well, those aren't the top prospects, so it's okay. And I agree. However, what I keep trying to reemphasize with people is when you're teams that are in contention, when you're trading prospects, it's not, or not trading prospects, it's not necessarily because you're viewing these guys, you're like, I think these guys are stars. There's a couple things, right? Maybe they think Abrams is a star, and they want it. Otherwise, you have to view it as just farm system depth and assets. You know what I'm saying? When you trade these guys, that means you cannot trade them for another player that might have been better this offseason. Maybe this package plus a Gore and one other thing might have got them Bryan Reynolds. Who knows? Or another better player from another team. Whatever. I can't think of what off the top of my head, but that's how you have to view it. And if you view it as that, it's just assets that the Padres probably lost, considering that Adam Frazier really did do anything for them. He started becoming a little bit more solid of a player at the end of the season when the team was already a mess. Great. Thanks, I guess. He didn't help us when the real downfall was happening. And it was bad. It was bad, Ethan. Like there was like base running blunders. There was like bunting. I think he bunted at one point with 2 strikes and then he was out. He had like it was like first pitch outs a lot, like little bloop lollipops, as I call them, to the second baseman. It was rough. And then on top of all that, he wasn't even in the lineup consistently. So like, here's our big trade acquisition, and it's game 2, and he's not even starting. And everyone's just like, what's going on here?
I remember that actually. I was super confused. I looked at your starting lineup, and I was like, didn't you guys just trade for him like 5 days ago?
24 hours ago. Yeah, it was like he played that first game, and then everyone was like, what the heck, man? Like, this doesn't make sense. And that's kind of how it went for the Padres. So for right now, unless maybe next year he comes back to the team, if he does, and then he does super well. For right now, it's probably a loss for the Padres, even if the assets don't seem like definitely is one of those things where you have to view it as, like I said, assets. It's not just about this guy making a major league impact. You acquire stuff. Think of it, people I feel like know this in the NBA. When you have depth on your team, you then trade for a superstar. That's how the NBA works.
Yep.
It's a little bit like that in baseball, except that sometimes baseball, you just like to have depth and you like to have a decent pitcher who could call up instead of having to sign Jake Arrieta and Vince Velasquez for the end of your season. So
yikes. But the one thing still about the first trade the Padres and the Pirates made with Joe Musgrove that I still think is awesome is Joe Musgrove, of course, is a San Diego native.
Sir.
From El Cajon, I believe, is actually where I heard from a lot of the Pirates announcers. And then Dave Bednar is from a suburb in Pittsburgh as well and comes out to Renegade, which is what we play all the time at Steeler games. And I already said the coolest moment, if I'm hopefully still the host of Locked On Pirates by then, is when they finally get back to the postseason and David Bednar comes out in the 8th inning or the 9th inning to close it out and just plays Renegade to a bunch of 39,000 Yinzers that are just going nuts. Like, if you ever want to watch a crowd go nuts, I don't care about Truist Park and all the crap that they did, like, with all their stuff. Like, cool, you won the World Series. Have fun with it. Awesome. Go get drunk. Go have fun. I've never been up to that new stadium yet because it's terrible to get in and out of, I've heard. And I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but Pirates fans, this is one thing that anybody from my, like, kind of place will tell you is, I mean, they just go nuts for baseball. Like, the team is a baseball, or the city is a baseball city, kind of like at its core. It's just the baseball team is never good. So it's like, so they're kind of like, what's a good comparison? They're kind of like Bills fans before the Bills were really good. Like, you know how they're good now, but like 5 years ago, they weren't.
I gotcha.
But everybody knew that their fans were awesome. That's kind of Pirates fans. Like, if you ever want to watch a crowd go in a frenzy, go back to 2013 when they made Johnny Cueto drop the ball off the mound and then they erupted. I've had people tell me who listen to my podcast that were there that legitimately say they were scared because the stadium was shaking because of how loud people were. Like, that's how loud that stadium got. And that was the 2nd inning. That wasn't even a guaranteed win yet. Russell Martin just hit a home run to make it 3-0. It wasn't even a guaranteed win yet. I was like, yeah, dude, bring me that kind of energy back, please. Ben Cherington, I'm begging you. Channel your 2013 Red Sox era and just make it happen, please.
Make it happen, indeed. Ethan, before I let you go, before we end this crossover, one last thing, just a quick general baseball thing. What is one thing that you're looking forward to the offseason?
I mean, we've talked about the CBA a lot. The salary thing, I'm just kind of staying away from because I have no input. I have an input on it. I just don't have a solution that everybody agrees on it. The universal DH, I think, just needs to happen. After watching the World Series and seeing the Astros have multiple like innings that just got shut down by the fact that they were in Atlanta and had to throw a pitcher out there that never hits. I think they need to just nix the pitchers hitting. I understand it for guys like Sully, older people that have watched baseball for so long, the National American League, that is their main difference. That is what they do. But I think baseball's changed to the point where a universal DH is in order. It'll give more hitters more chances. Pitchers will just have to focus on pitching, which I think you'll see an uptick in pitching if that happens. And I've also suggested a expanded playoff to the point where you add one more team to each conference or each league, whatever you want to call it. That would have allowed the Blue Jays and I think it was the Reds to make the playoffs this year. Because I am a firm believer that if the Toronto Blue Jays would have made the playoffs this year, they would have won the World Series. I say that. I mean, who would, like, that offense was going to rip apart everybody. It really was. It was just their pitching that shut them down outside of Robbie Ray. But realistically, just fix the CBA very quickly so we get baseball in March. That's all I really care about. Whatever gripes you guys have, whatever you guys need to figure out, just figure it out. Make the right decisions. Make baseball better. Make it more marketable. And then let's get back to spring training in March. That's really what I'm looking forward to in the offseason. And for the Pirates to sign Andrew McCutchen.
That would be nice. Honestly, I want that to happen too. McCutchen's such a fun player. Look, I would say I agree with you on the universal DH thing and on Sully, who's the host of Locked On MLB. Look, I just love alleged progressive baseball fans who want the sport to like get better, and then they're like,
Mhm.
wait. I don't want
Yeah.
my pitcher that bats 120 every year to be taken out of lineup. Not to mention, not just the making the games better, it also makes roster construction more interesting. Hey guys, you know what would be really fun if more teams could have got Nelson Cruz at the deadline. You know what I mean? Instead of the Padres being like, "Oh, can he play
Imagine the
second?"
Padres
You know?
getting Nelson Cruz.
Exactly.
Imagine if the Padres went and got Nelson Cruz instead of Adam Frazier.
That's the pitch right there. That's the soundbite, guys. But of course, that's all the time we have, guys, for today. Thank you for making Locked On Padres and Locked On Pirates your hashtag first listen every day. Now make your second listen with the aforementioned Paul Francis Sullivan, Locked On MLB. But please call him Sully, guys. It brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues, both past and present. It's free and available on all platforms. Ethan, before we close this bad boy out, one last thing. What do you got to plug? Tell the good people what you got going on.
Well, you guys already see at the bottom of the screen. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. Always talking about Los Angeles Clippers basketball. So a lot of you guys are over there. So maybe you root for the Clippers as well. Most of my timeline is Pittsburgh fans. So they were kind of like, just like, what the world is going on and what is he talking about? As you can see, big UGA guy. Kind of annoyed that Alabama is number 2, but I hope we handle business in December whenever we do play them. You can also follow the podcast at Locked On Pirates as well. You can follow it on YouTube, pretty much anywhere you get Javi, Spotify, Odyssey, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, stuff like that. You can follow that there as well. And I may actually be going across networks here at the Locked On Podcast Network next week or the week after to be on some other shows. Maybe my outfit is a little hint to that, but we're hashing out the details right now. But that's pretty much all I have today.
Awesome, man. Yeah, basically same goes for me, guys. That about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to my show, same place as Ethan said, available and free on all platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. If you see me pointing to it right now, that means you're watching the YouTube. If you didn't see me point to it, it means you're not watching it, which you should be. It's really cool. You get to see our handsome lad Ethan and my weird, by the way, I didn't even mention I got a haircut. I don't know why I didn't even mention that at all. My haircut, a lot of people in the comments have been attacking me for my hair thing. There you go. I made all of you hopefully proud. So be sure to do that. It should be in the description for all my audio listeners. Locked On Padres on YouTube and at LO_Padres for the podcast Twitter page. Memes and dreams on both accounts as for Ethan. And until next time, stay safe and of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies. Take care.
Oh, yeah.